Test 1, 2, 3. Welcome.
Hello, folks.
Oh.
Mike here. Just a reminder that I have to leave by 11 o'clock, please.
Okay, welcome. It's special electoral area services committee meeting of Thursday, October 5th, 2023, and we're here to do budget stuff. And we are on the traditional territories of 10 First Nations, which I like to try and remember them: Quw'utsun, Malahat, Pockwashin, Tubasset, Pachidat, and Dididat, Halalt, Liaxin, Penelakut, and Suminas. And we are greatly grateful that we are able to do our work here on their traditional territories that they've cared for thousands of years. All right, let's turn to the agenda. Corporate Secretary.
First item, just to your adoption.
A motion to approve the agenda. One item. I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Let's move on to the first report. I'm really disappointed that we're missing two people. Oh no, Jesse just came. Welcome, Jesse. Okay, and then the other person is Blaze. Just give me 2 seconds while I text him and see if he may have forgotten. Okay, so I've done what I can. Welcome, Amanda.
Good morning. Today we're presenting you with your Function 250 budget. I'm here today with Ms. Tracy Bowen, our amazing acting Chief Financial Officer. So before you we have your 250 budget report, and you'll notice that we've you have two scenarios there before you. And Tracy will walk you through each line item and answer any questions you have.
We're just trying to get the worksheet up.
Chase is helping. Oh. We're fighting with Chase.
Okay, I need the other one, actually. How do I get the other one?
This is a year over year, but I'm trying to get to the line by line.
Chase, can you put up the other document that we sent?
There we go. There, we got it figured out.
Show on the screen.
Okay. So we'll just hide these other columns of my notes. Okay, so the top part of this, so we'll just go column by column. So what I gave you what Amanda and I gave you was column B, C, and D are your actuals that have happened for 2021, 2022, And for 2023, up until September, middle of September, so there's still expenses that are occurring for this year. So UBCM, not all the expenses have been brought in, and not all payroll has been brought in yet. So that number is going to go up. So your surplus is going to go down for the year.
And that was number D?
That was column D, yes.
So the third column, okay.
Yeah. So then the fourth column over, column E, is the budget that you approved last year. Column F, which is the next one over, which is, we've labeled it reduced core. So that is the one that we have at the 14%, where we've taken out as much as we can to reduce your budget down for this year. And as we go through, you'll see which line items we have taken out. The next column over is if we maintain core the way it is. So with not deducting anything for expenses or for conferences or anything like that. And that is at a 25% increase. So the reason, sorry.
Just to clarify, when you say 14% and 25%, that is compared to the amended budget 2023?
Correct. So what we do is we take the difference between what the 2024 requisition, this is only for the requisition, so that we have the one, just like over 1 million there. The difference between those two and the increase is 14% from one year to the next. And then column G is a 25% increase from 1 year to the next.
On the requisition line?
On the requisition line, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And as you'll see in your budget for 2023, you had we carried forward a surplus of 151,000, which was able to keep your requisition down last year. That money is not really available this year.
Right, so that's, the bottom line is, if we continue to do that kind of thing, we run out of money, and then the rubber hits the road, so. Director Morrison.
There seemed to be some confusion last year about when exactly this happens. And we had some people around the table that seemed to think that the bounce, this is the bounce, right? The bounce doesn't exist. Well, the bounce exists. This is it. This is when you take from surplus or operating reserve and you gotta pay for it the next year. This is exactly what they're talking about. So I hope everybody keeps in mind when we go to the big table and we're talking about some of those things that we're experiencing, the bounce. This is exactly what they're talking about. I knew it was coming and that we'd have a number like this, but I just wanted everybody to be clear that this is what happens when you take a little bit. And I think that's part of the reason why there was a 50% take on the compensation as opposed to 100%. So anyways, just wanted to make sure all of us at least are aware of the fact that this is the perfect example of that bounce in the subsequent year.
All right, Director Abbott.
Chair, thank you. Can we clarify what bounce means? Let's use some accounting terms.
Through the chair to Director Abbott. So what it is, as you can see on the screen, the surplus has gone, we've been carrying from the previous year in. So like in 2021, we carried over just under 60,000, and then 2022, we just over 100,000, and last year we carried 151. So that was what was surplus from the previous year. And we carried, instead of putting it into operating reserves, we were carrying it forward so that you didn't have to requisition as much. This year, because we're still deducting from the year of expenses, the amount is going to be very little, and I'm going to recommend you put that into operating reserves, so you're not going to have that amount coming forward as a revenue source. So now the bump has to go into your requisition to cover that 150,000 that you no longer will be having as a requisition or as a revenue source this year in 2024. So
In lay terms, there is no surplus as we approach the end of the fiscal year. And I'm trying to read this screen. I can't read the one that's in front of me, but Amanda has printed me one.
So if you go to, I think it's page 3 on your document, I did mine a little different. Down at the very bottom, it has a surplus deficit as the very last line. It's like line 84 if you're looking on the screen. The one that I have up there, that's 154 showing right now, but we're not finished this year yet.
Your suggestion is let's think of it as zero. If it's not zero, there's a minor surplus, we're putting it to ops or to operating?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. In 2021, when we had the budget meeting with the board at that time to discuss 250 again, it was decided at that time that you wanted to take 50,000 of your surplus every year, put it into op reserve to commit it for the election in 2026. So 50 of this still should be considered to put into that so that you don't have to tax in 2026 for that 200+ thousand that would be for the election in 2026.
Thank you for the clarification.
No, please just ask your questions. I'm as confused as everyone.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, I do have my hand up on the screen there.
Oh, thanks. Just do see, because with the things on the screen, I'd appreciate people to just go ahead and interject when you can.
I've already talked, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. I've asked a question of Tracy, and she is looking into this as to why we've got $648,000 for GIS in this particular budget.
Hey, Mike.
I just don't see it there somehow.
Excuse me, Mike. Let's let the finance staff go through the whole thing. So if there's any sort of overall questions, let's ask them now, and then let's go through the presentation.
Okay.
Okay? Line by line sort of thing? Yeah.
So just an overall question, because I know Director Morrison brings up the idea of the bounce. Sorry, Director Abbott. But one of the things is that we're just looking year over year. And my impression is that, and maybe from an accountant's perspective, if you look at it over a 5-year period or even a 2 or 3 year budget period, that bounce would then be put into perspective.
Through the chair to Director Martin. Yes, if you had not done with the surpluses previous, it would have been more even. It would have been more even keel along the years instead of going, now we're doing this big spike, and then you'll probably level off. But yeah, this is the year that the big spike is happening because of past practice of what we've been doing to keep it at that certain level.
Right, I know the big spike is considered to be the bounce, but I think what my point is that if we had the budget, if we compared the budget to the 2022 budget, if we had all 3 budgets there, you would actually see that the 2022 budget to 2023 was kept low because of influx of surplus. And then 23 go to 24 goes higher, but overall, when you look from 22 to 24, you're going to see it as being, where did you take the money from? And sure, there is a spike, but you don't recognize about, yeah, did you want to have that did you want to requisition it last year, or are you going to requisition it this year? So I think overall it's, as much as it hurts to see the bounce, I think the idea is don't forget it helped last year. So that's my perspective. Anyways, thanks.
Through the chair to Director Martin. Yes, the idea is to keep it even. And the balance we're looking at is just requisition because you have no other revenue sources within this function. Requisition is the only one, or surplus. Those are the only 2 revenue sources. And that's why now we're seeing this, is because we've been taking from the surplus instead of putting it into the operating reserve, which is below, right now at what we're sitting at is below your 2-month minimum for the operating reserve balance. And as you can see with the transfer from operating reserve this year for 2023, we budgeted 130, because 50 of that was to cover wages. And because of what we've got within the budget this year, I do not foresee that I'm going to have to transfer that 50,000 out of your operating reserve. So that will leave your operating reserve a little bit higher this year. But
Okay, so alternate director Salmon's joined us. Do you have any, alternate director Salmon, you missed the beginning part. Do you have any questions about what the different columns are?
No, I asked Tracy after a meeting yesterday,
Okay,
so
perfect.
I think I'm good. Thanks.
So carry on, Tracy, thank you.
So that will bring us down to the revenues. So this year for the budget, we've not carried any surplus forward, and I have not recorded any transfer from operating reserves at this time in the first budget that we present. The second budget that we're presenting, the 80,000, is for the LiDAR. But Ms. Mohan will have some more information on that one that we can decide on that one at a later date, a later time. You don't have touchscreen. So now we'll move into the expenses. So for the expenses, for the director's wages, as you can see, the budget is bumped up due to last year's increase. And so that's gone up a bit, and we still have months to come through. So we still have 6 more pay periods, 7 more on this one because this is mid-September, that have to go through this GL. Same with your benefits. So those 2 are still ones that are going to have expenses applied to it. Director's expenses, that is your volunteer appreciation GL. That's what that GL is and what that expense is for. Community information is for you guys to spend. I think we dropped that one last year in half to what it was in the budget for 2022. We dropped that one in half. Conference and seminars, we've put to being 1,000 per director, so 500 is what was in there for each director to bring that budget. Travel, the travel line is for travel for doing business for the CVRD. So it's any coming to the meetings here and different things, anything that you're doing on behalf of the CVRD, that's what that travel is for. That's what that GL is for. Telephone is for cell phones and such. Miscellaneous equipment, we brought it down a bit, but that's for replacement of computers or cell phones or something like that. That happens throughout the year that we have to replace for you. The general government allocation is an allocation to pay, everybody pays a general government allocation. The GIS allocation is split between 100 and 250, and that is for the GIS budget, for the GIS department. And this has been split this way since 2016, that the lion's share comes from 250. So that's why that one's there. That's been a budgeted item since 2016. Sundry expenses we always put in just for those need to have, if you have to have like the small one. Meeting expenses is for catering and EAS forums and stuff that happen here. That's where that falls under. The 60,000 is the grant, so that's covered by grant, so it's not really going to be covered by requisition. And then we always put in contingency. And then we scroll down to the 3 major conferences, which is UBCM, AVICC, and the FCM.
Did you cover the governance study? Sorry.
Governance study is it's a budgeted for 2024. A grant is being given, and then we're having the expense. So the 2 cross each other off. They will not affect requisition or any other expenses.
Can I ask, just following up on Mike's question, just out of curiosity, what was the line of thinking for having the GIS be in this function?
I'm still, through Director Nicholson to Director McClinton, I'm still looking back through data to try and figure out why the change happened from function 325 to 250 in 2016. So a lot of people that were involved in that beforehand are no longer working here, so I'm looking through back files to find,
Just to follow up, if I may, does it make sense to possibly look at that and or does it even matter?
It was, the small part that I was able to find with regards to the GS is because 250 is covered by all electoral areas, which is GIS. The 325 isn't quite all. There's a small little section that didn't quite match. So it wasn't the same taxpayers paying for 325 as 250. There's a little bit of a difference there in the assessed value when I was calculating the assessment and how much per 100,000 it would be. There was a bit of a difference there. But Barb might have something more on that. I'm still looking.
So we've, thank you everybody, good morning. So in terms of what the split is, right now it appears that the split is 80% of GIS is funded out of 250 and 20% of GIS is funded out of function 100. So the 250 covers off things like all of the activity of land use services, which is a heavy user of GIS. It's the biggest single user of GIS in our organization. It also covers GIS for water, sewer, and drainage, for curbside, for community parks, for fire departments, for street lighting, for elections, and a couple of small functions in environment that are related to EA electoral areas. So it doesn't fund anything around recreation or any economic development. So then there's the rest of the GIS budget comes out of function 100, and so those are generally there's approximately 50% of that comes from allocation, meaning that all of the divisions of the CVRD pay something into those general funds, and the rest is funded through other sources. So some of it's requisition, some of it's grants, reserves, that kind of thing. And those GIS functions are things like asset management, sort of centralized, generalized asset management functions, a lot of the environment functions, regional recreation, emergency management, solid waste, like Bing's central solid waste, and regional parks. So there's not a lot of GIS money currently allocated for those regional functions, only 20% of the total GIS budget. And we have been constrained in GIS from a staffing perspective for some time, and so senior management is currently looking at this split and also how services are actually being delivered and whether or not this is an appropriate split for those services. So further to Director McClinton's question, yes, we are looking at it actively all the time, but it's been a little bit difficult to do so because we've basically only been staffed at about 50% in GIS for 2 to 3 years, just due to the labor market changes, et cetera. So it's been very difficult to kind of get a clear picture of how it's designed to be because we haven't had full staffing. So. But I will say most of the money is for staffing. There's some, and then there's the LiDAR piece. So I'm willing to talk about the LiDAR piece now if you like, if that's useful. Or feel free to move on, and then I can come back and talk about LiDAR at any time. So,
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes, but you'd
we're
like
on
to
the
talk about
subject of
LiDAR. wouldn't you?
GIS.
You'd like to talk about LiDAR, Director Wilson.
Okay, because I have questions on that as well.
Okay, so let's do that now.
okay. So starting in 2020, Sharon Hepner, our IT manager, worked with GIS to put a program together where we would make an annual contribution to reserves. And it was a sort of a 5-year plan. And the idea was kind of in line with asset management, where both orthophotos, which are aerial photography, and LiDAR, which is topography information, so elevation information, that those things would be built into the budget. And this was sort of the preliminary step to build them into the budget, but so that we would always be contributing so that we could update those assets for mapping on an ongoing basis. So, and as you can imagine, that mapping is really important. The LiDAR data specifically has been used lately in things like floodplain mapping, where you need to know the elevation of the different landforms to be able to predict flooding, et cetera. So the funds have been accumulating in the general government reserve, and they are at a fairly high level. So I think the 5-year plan was to accumulate 400,000, and we're at about 380,000. So we have good reserves. Because of the GIS staffing deficit, when we went to orthophotos in 2022, which is the last time we participated, we didn't need to dip into the reserve for that, is what it's looking like. So the reserve remains intact. The orthophoto work and the LiDAR work, we often partner with other local governments to reduce the overall cost and to make sure we get really complete mapping. And so that's generally been our approach, but there are other approaches. So you can buy off-the-shelf data for those kinds of things. The problem with off-the-shelf data is that you end up as an organization with patchwork data based on projects and individual initiatives, and sometimes that can be very difficult to integrate. And then also there's, if you continue with a patchwork data kind of approach, it can be more costly actually than getting the full data on a regular schedule, which is why we went to this system of putting in for into the reserve on a regular basis. So there are options around this right now. We do have a significant reserve. We do not have to do a complete LiDAR mapping exercise in 2024. We can hold on to those monies and use them for a future LiDAR. And in the meantime, there are monies available. If any individual project needs LiDAR data, we can buy it. It's not the most efficient or cost-effective way to do it, but it's a possible way. So yeah, I'm hoping that answers some of the LiDAR questions.
So on the column that you're suggesting on cuts, you've zeroed out that LiDAR. everything. Okay, so that's the very bottom of our sheets here on this table. All right. So,
I'm here, Madam Chair.
Director Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. As it's been zeroed out, because I'm still seeing 80,000 there.
There are two columns, Director
Yep.
Wilson. The farthest one is the one that is with everything as sort of the core budget as we had planned in the past.
Right.
And then
Okay.
the other one is with staff's suggestions on where we could make some cuts.
Okay, that's on column F though, so that's been zeroed out, that $80,000. Okay, now the other question is, of course, on the GIS itself, and I know this has been answered or rather addressed. I'm still very, very confused as to splits as to who pays for what on what is a major. Now, don't get me wrong, GIS to me is one of the most important things there is. LiDAR, maybe not so much right now because it's an enhancement which at the moment at our level I don't see as being absolutely essential. GIS, yes, with everything else that's going on, but I'm still very, very concerned about the split that's going on here. So if, and I think I heard Tracy right, 80% is paid by somebody else, but 20% is paid by us. Was that correct, Tracy?
Through the chair to Director Wilson, no, it's 80% is paid by function 250 and 20% is paid by function 100, which is general government.
Okay, and thereby hangs my problem. Why are we in 250 paying 80% of it when there was mention of regional, there's mention of regional parks, there's mention of everything, and with planning being the major user of this, I honestly don't see that the 80-20 the way it is right now is the right way of doing it. It should be the other way around. And again, I will let me confirm, I have a great deal of faith in GIS, absolutely essential, but we shouldn't be paying for it. Somebody else should be paying for it.
Please.
Through the chair to Director Wilson. So the last time we did an analysis, which would have been toward sometime in the summer, we actually 95% of GIS services were going to land use, which in our organization is electoral area services support. But it's a skewed picture because those are where our urgent priorities are right now, and we have been short-staffed. So we only just became a full complement of GIS at the end of June, and then immediately lost someone to an internal move, and so we are still understaffed in GIS by one position. And so even though currently 95% of GIS services go to land use, it's not an accurate picture because we've been understaffed. So we're not, and we've been understaffed for several years. So we do not have actually accurate data that reflects how GIS services should operate based on this funding formula. But right now, it's actually tipping the other way, where regional services are getting less than their 20% that they're paying for. So we hope to be able to do better analysis now that we're fully staffed, and there is internal scrutiny on how the needs of regional functions for GIS services, which have grown, and so we will be looking at that going forward. But right now, this is the best information that we have. So.
Yeah, understood. And follow up, please, Madam Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, and this is good. This is good. But I'm just wondering, in this particular case, GIS again, very complicated, very necessary, and highly useful, to say the least. Has there been, and I know I'm going to get a few frowns at this one, has there been looking at any alternatives, such as the speciality companies that are out there who can provide this kind of data very quickly? Has there been any kind of cost analysis on internal or external?
So through the chair to Director Wilson, we're in the process. What I can say is there are, because we've been understaffed, the organization has made use of consulting and contracted resources for GIS data in a number of different areas, most notably in land use and environment. And so those GIS services are reflected in sort of consulting budgets in those various functions. And so, and that's a fairly accurate way of costing and paying for GIS services because they're particular to those functions. So that is a strategy we've been using to mitigate the staffing vacancies in GIS. We have had one area go and have sort of a service review of their GIS needs, and we're currently working to implement some of the recommendations from that review. And so, yeah, there is active work right now on trying to bring our GIS services up to a level that supports the organization, and then quantifying what that use is, and then having the budgets reflect that. It's just, we're not.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to, if we can, look at very carefully at the split here, because I'm not, as I say, I'm very concerned about the way this has been split, with the majority being placed on this particular budget. Thank you.
Director Morrison.
I understand it's a big number, and I think Ms. Bowen's accurately reflected, from what I can recall, how this is clearly an anomaly. It doesn't relate to director services in any way. It should more relate to land use, but I recall at the time there wasn't a more appropriate place to put this. And even if this disappeared out of this function, it's going to end up in another function which will have to be paid for. So in the grand scheme of things, when we're looking at the overall global budget, we're probably going to want these services as the users of 250 and the function 250. Yeah, probably doesn't belong here, but it's going to belong somewhere. So this was the most appropriate place to pay for it at the time. I think we probably need to talk about some of the other things that are going to more directly impact us and the purpose of the function.
Okay, so any more general questions about this?
Just a comment on the GIS, if I can.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think, from my perspective, I think what I'm hearing sort of falls into that category of if we go down the path of looking at the split, staff has already said that perhaps this is kind of generous towards electoral areas already. So if we go down the path and find out it's a 90-10, I think we'll be sitting here, if I want to quote a friend of mine, looking at a solution and saying we want our problem back. So anyways.
Madam Chair, is the staff presentation complete?
Ms. Bowen, is it complete? I don't think so.
No,
Okay.
We've almost got
I
to
thought
the
we
end.
were holding our questions. Thank you.
So I got through the general expenses, and then I was down to getting into the UBCM, AVICC, and FCM expenses. And then that last line is the LiDAR, which we've taken out in the one budget, but we've added it back into the other. These are suggestions if you guys want to change. So we've, as you see, everything that's highlighted is the budgets that we've made changes to. So you'll see as the UBCM we've canceled out the AVICC and the FCM conferences. We've canceled out all those expenses to bring your budget down to make the 14%.
Okay, so I have to apologize. My eyes aren't very good, so I'm having trouble finding. I'm down on the yellow thing, director's expenses, underneath the thing that says contingency on the table.
Yes, so then the director's expense, the director's travel, registration, those first ones.
Those are for what?
That's for UBCM.
That's UBCM?
Correct. Then the next set of highlighted three ones again, that's for the AVICC.
Okay.
And then the next three highlighted ones is for the FCM. And then the very last highlighted is the LiDAR.
Right, okay. So just FCM expenditures, is that a total number then?
Yeah, so the total number is, we budgeted was 8,000. We left the memberships in for each of those areas.
Okay, so
for UBCM,
that bottom line is a total.
it's the actual budget for the membership for those three areas.
So FCM expenditures is about the membership?
Is the membership, yeah, and the AVICC expenditure of 8,600 is for the membership, and the UBCM conference expense line, that 15,000 is for the membership. Those are three we did not cut.
I guess, right. I'm sorry. So when it says UBC, when it says FCM expenditures, and say, it says 21,500, that's the total of all the lines above it? No?
No, it is.
What is that for
Yeah,
then?
so if you're looking in column E, and it's the 21,500,
Yeah.
that is for the 23 budget of all the lines above it. So for director's expense, the travel.
It is,
The
okay,
conference
I
and
got
the
it right.
membership. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep,
So this is a total number.
correct.
I have a question if no one else
Yes,
does.
please do, Director Acton.
Thank you. I have a question and a comment. Clearly, we can't. We've cut down all the director's expenses here on conferences quite a bit last year. And half of our role is to work with other legislations from our community. So clearly we can't go down to zero for all conferences. So I definitely would not be supporting that. And otherwise, it's kind of like we might as well just toss out half of our role. But my question is, and so what I've heard is the GIS budget is quite high because it has been understaffed for some time, so they have enough for reserves. And the LiDAR, if they wish to go forward with that project, can come out of that when that budget comes forward. It could come out of reserves or however they want to figure it out. It doesn't have to come out of here. So my question is, if we remain with the core budget, the column G, and take out the $80,000, do we have that number and that percentage? I have a follow-up.
Through the chair to Director Acton, I do not have that number handy right now, but if you give me a second, I can try and get that number for you.
Thank you.
I also have, for each of the top ones, so leaving them as it is, the current budget that you have, it's $4.75 per 100,000 for column E. Column F, if you stick with that budget and cut it down to core, it's going to be $5.42 per 100,000. The last column, if we leave as is, untouched, I'll take the 80,000 out, but right now it sits at $5.95 per 100,000 for those three different ones. So those are a different way of looking at it than 14% and 25%. So there's a little bit different there.
Sorry, which was why are there three? I thought we were just looking
I
at
did
two.
last year's, but I
Oh,
compared to last year's.
Last year's
yeah.
was $4.75,
Yes.
but that's still not, we haven't,
The reduced core would be $5.42 per 100,000.
versus $5.95.
$5.95.
And that's not taking out the LiDAR if we choose to risk manage that one.
Correct.
Okay, so
Oh, it's not. So do we have any idea if it's removed?
well, it'll be a little less than $5.95.
Yes, it will be. Yeah.
And we're talking.
Can I have a follow-up?
Between the two, we're talking cents.
Correct.
Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up?
Yes, please do.
Well, I think there's a lot of variables that are unclear at this time. It's quite early in our budget season. I would propose that we stick with the core budget minus the 80,000. And I'm prepared to make a motion to that effect. And this is just preliminary. We can revisit this budget at any time and including when we go through all of it. So this is a clear budget. I don't think there's anything we cut it down quite a bit last year and we need to do our jobs. So I look to the table and I am actually, I guess I'm allowed to have a motion. That's my motion if I have a seconder.
Thank you, it's been seconded.
Okay,
But
thank
before
you.
we go any farther, I just have one question about the overall chart here, is about the election. So we generally requisition money that we put away for the election every 4 years, so that we don't take a big hit on election year. Is
So
that true?
We haven't been taxing for it. It's been whatever you have as a surplus at the end of the year. You've decided that from the surplus, you'll take out of the surplus. So if this year you have 100,000, let's say it's 100,000 as a surplus, 50 of that would be earmarked, like we would put it into your operating reserve, and we would commit that.
But
For
you
the
said
future
that we
license.
might not have much reserve this year.
We might not, but there's enough room in your, that you would,
There's enough flex there that
Yep.
we can manage that.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yep.
great. Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm here again.
Yeah, okay, we'll have discussion on the motion that's on the floor, which is column G without the LiDAR.
okay, so removing the LiDAR, you're gonna drop down to $5.54 per 100,000, and your percent drops to 17.
Okay, and 17%. Did everyone get that? All right, so discussion, Mike, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, let's see here. Where was I? Yeah, I think probably one of the elephants in the room here is the $11,111 that we voted for ourselves last year. That's one of the big bumps that's here, but we'll pass that one by. I have heard over and over again that we lead by example. And one of the things that I've personally done is cancelled my attendance at VIEA this year, which may help in bringing some of the things down. Because again, conferences, let's get onto that one. I have questioned before, and I will continue to question whether we should, at our level, attend national conferences. And in this particular one, FCM comes to mind. Yes, perhaps some of the higher up should attend that one, and we have cut that one back so that only certain people attend that one. That was a good move. I think that's great. But UBCM is important, but we could actually say, does everybody need to attend that? AVICC, absolutely. On a local level, everybody should be at that because we are then supporting what we do in this local area here. So what the staff have done so far, and I'm quite prepared to support Director Acton's motion here, but I do question FCM. I do question whether UBCM can be attended not every year, but certainly every other year by directors. AVICC, absolutely every year as well. And one of the things that comes to mind as well was the mention of community information. That's a big one. I have done all my community communications via Facebook, via meetings, via everything else. I've never touched that budget. So I'm really wondering whether that one is absolutely necessary or not. Small bits and pieces, I know. Maybe in the overall picture, it's not going to have a big effect on the overall budget that we've heard mentioned, but we have to do something. We can't just sit back and do nothing. So from that point of view, I'm quite prepared to support Director Acton's motion here, but I would really like to look at communications, whether attendance at UBCM, etc., and certainly FCM is necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Wilson. So let's start by looking at FCM. We have a sort of policy, I believe, which I can't remember. Do we have that?
through the chair, yes.
We do.
Okay, so I would
three.
just like that to be, everyone reminded of what that is.
Yeah, so for last year during the budget on the FCM, you guys had agreed that only 3 for FCM is what we'd budget for. And it would be 3 EAA directors.
So
That's
3
what we-
EA directors. Director Morrison would like to speak to that.
Yeah.
I totally understand that this is a challenging budget year. Staff came to us several months ago and we're talking about 6%, and we gave them a mandate of 3.5. I can tell you that the attitude towards conferences ebbs and flows depending on the people around the table. And there have been, there have been boards that have supported the enhanced skill development, training, increasing our knowledge base, the networking that's involved in all of these conferences. And if people view these conferences as perks, then I think we're looking at it, they're looking at it the wrong way, in that if you go to these conferences and work and network and do all the things that they're meant to be for, you end up being a better skilled, better representative. And I know this is debate about the motion on the floor, So I'll end with this, that the current, well, two things. FCM, you know, is that valuable to us? Their principal objective coming out of the FCM conference, and they only have 2 or 3 resolutions at each conference, was to review the relationship between the federal government and municipalities and looking at a new way to fund local governments, which is a key priority at UBCM as well. So are they doing work that's going to directly impact and assist us? Absolutely. And I think the more bodies that we have in attendance to help with, you know, our presence, it's really important. Most municipalities are sending most of their folks to that. And the last point I'll make is, and it may not be for everybody around this table, but the current president of UBCM is, or of FCM, is a mayor of a small town in rural Quebec. And you know, how does a small town mayor in rural Quebec become the president of FCM? Well, he's been to 14 FCMs in a row. And his presence and his community's presence has been well known. And that's how people are able to bring influence to those bodies and those organizations. I'll stop with that. I fully support the resolution that's on the floor. I think that it's really, you know, cutting off our nose to spite our face if we do any further cuts to conferences. Thanks.
Thank you. So then let's, if
I have a question.
anyone else would like to talk about FCM, let's clarify what the policy is around UBCM, which I think is everyone is able to go if they want to go. Yeah, and AVICC similarly. And so then let's move on to the communications line item, which is, where is it on the?
Are we discussing the motion on the floor?
Yeah, we are. I just want to clarify. Yeah, if you want to talk about UBC, I just want to do it line by line, though. If you do you have any comments on UBCM or AVICC?
My question's a little bit more general, so I'll let you finish.
All righty, so let's just deal with the communications one. These are issues that Director Wilson has raised. And where is that? Ms. Bowen, can
Madam Chair, point of order. We have a resolution on the floor, and it's to vote on the resolution on the floor. If there's going to be additional changes to the resolution that's on the floor, it has to be brought forward as an amendment for discussion. So I think you're a step ahead. If a director around the table wants to bring up an amending motion, they can, but it's not appropriate coming from the chair.
Director Morrison, I understand that, but what I would like right now is clarification on what is in these line items that Director Wilson has got some concerns about that relate to the motion on the floor. I mean, we
Point of order, he said he supports this motion. I don't know why we're picking through the comments.
Okay, I can make an amendment.
You know what? This might not be completely legit, but what I am really think we should be trying to do is get consensus and understanding about what is in this budget. So if you would just bear with me, I would like to look at that communications line and understand what is in there.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have ruled that we will carry on and look at the communications line item, if that's all right with everyone.
You can challenge the ruling of the chair.
Okay, can you just, Ms. Bowen, where is it?
So it's more up on the first lines of expenses after director's regular pay, hour, and benefits. The director's expense, which is the 10,800, which is the volunteer. That's 1,200 per director to spend for volunteer appreciation. The next item is the community information, which is 27,000. We cut that in half last year, and it's 3,000 per director to spend on, I believe it's advertising and different things within your community that isn't already being done by the CVRD. And I believe there was a note to get more information on that, what can be charged in there.
So I'm seeing now that we've only spent about $1,000 of it, of the budget to date.
Correct.
So it may be that this is a line that we have too much in if people aren't using it?
Madam Chair, just, this line item had, community services came forward and asked for a large portion of it, so I guess that's just not showing up.
Okay, through the chair to Director Acton, we'll have to look into that because it's definitely not been reflected in VADM, so it's obviously been charged somewhere else.
Oh,
Or it has not come through yet.
Right, I remember that was very recently. Okay,
Just a comment, it's just nice to have one line item that has a little bit of buffer, and this one maybe does for some years. But for other years, my community has used it when we have really important issues and no other way to fund the messaging getting out there, and not everybody's online, and sometimes we have to use traditional means of communication.
okay. So Ms. Gerald's just going to clarify this.
Thank you. So the board did authorize the use of 250 funds for the purpose of holding the regional agriculture
Right.
session, and that happened the very end of September, and so that's why the money's not reflected in the budget to date, but that is coming.
Yes, I agree that some buffer is nice. All right, so we're back to the motion, which is on the floor, which is that we do column G without the LiDAR.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Right.
So Director
If I could
McClinton.
maybe ask my question now. Is that possible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I think I'm going to support this motion. I just like a little bit of context. I'm a kind of a big picture person. I do recall pulling from the, forgive me, I'm forgetting the terms, but from the extra, what's it called? Can you help me so I use the right terminology?
Surplus.
It's from the surplus. I do remember, I know my area was staring down barrel of double-digit increase, and I was looking for anything. So I'm comfortable with this one, knowing that we've kind of got to make up for what had happened. So 2 questions: is there other sort of functions coming forward where we're going to see the bounce, as we're calling it, and in roughly what percentage for the electoral service areas budget does 250 make up? Are you able to answer those questions? I know they're pretty.
Through the chair to Director McClinton, I'll have to look into that one because that is not off the top of my head. So I'm going to have to get back to you on how much this out of the 40+ million of a budget. So I can look into that. As for the other departments, they did struggle to make your mandate. So you will see budgets with big cuts or reduction in services to make the 3.5 mandate. I know there is going to be some that did not make it due to contractual obligations. So those are different ones because we've had outside contracts that we can't deduct, so they will be over the mandate. But yes, we had a lot of departments struggle to make the 3.5.
Follow up, if I may. I don't recall other functions where we pulled from the surplus for the operating. Am I incorrect in that?
Through the chair to Director McClinton, I'd have to look back and see, but it's not a lot pulled from their surplus and bring them forward because we don't usually encourage it, but there are some that do. And it just becomes part of the budget. It's not like seeing from an operating reserve where you actually see it coming in and being pulled. A lot of surpluses just roll forward.
Right. Yeah, I'm comfortable supporting the motion on the floor.
Director Martman, did you have?
So maybe to address Director Clinton's question around what else might be coming down that we may have put into reserves. It isn't a reserve item, but don't forget there's regional recreation coming to your area and mine very soon for 2024 and 2025, because that's been phased in over 3 years. We're also looking in Area H at curbside collection coming in 2025. These are pretty big ticket items. And so from my community's perspective, I think, as Director Wilson said, lead by example. The only piece I put into that is, unless there's really good evidence that there's good expenditures, like are you spending the money in a way that's going to have bang for the buck. And so when I look at these things, I do agree. I think AVICC does give that. I think it gives you that communication with your local representatives that have similar issues. UBCM, I would say, I'm on the fence on that one. This year, I would say, or in 2024, I would say, yeah, I think we have a really good opportunity because it's in Victoria. And so it's close to us. So I see there's a real good, there's evidence, I think, that would give good results for the dollars we spend there. FCM, I just can't speak to it because I've never attended it. If we put the money in the budget and we decide that, hey, we just don't want to spend the money, then don't go. That is the other option for that. Make your decision by not attending it. So where do I stand with this? I'm very concerned about the amount that's coming towards Area H, and I guess I would look to say to my constituents and maybe to the other directors here, we need to maybe make an amendment around. You know what? I don't know where I can make the amendment other than to be cognizant of how much we're spending things.
Thank you. Director Abbott?
Along the lines of Director Markman's comments, I'm concerned about going with the maintaining the core. But I think Director Acton said that we proceed ahead with the notion that this will be fine-tuned, reductions would be possible. I got a great deal out of the conferences attended this year, but I would concede that this is an austerity year coming ahead with, as Director Markman mentioned, waste management coming online for some areas more so than others. But I'd be inclined to say going forward, maybe we do a third go to AVIC, a third of the EA directors go to AVICC, a third go to UBCM, and FCM we continue with the present direction. But I would hope, and I will support Director Acton's motion, but I would hope that we keep that pencil sharp and give staff the opportunity to keep parsing this budget as much as possible.
I'm going to turn to people I haven't heard from, just because I'm trying to get a feel for where we're at here. Director Deck, how are you sitting?
In terms of conferences, I think it's critical that the speakers that speak directly to the ministers, their directors or mayors or CAO, continue to have that opportunity. I'm not sure that we have as much impact on ministers, say in the breakout groups, as we hope to have. So I don't believe I would attend next year based on although I say I look forward to it. It was all, I'm not sure that I had an impact myself. So yeah, I think we could potentially make some cuts in the conferences. AVICC, similarly, really. So that's where I stand in terms of cuts.
Alternate Director Salmon.
Thank you. All things considered, I support the motion.
Okay, and I think I've heard from everyone else, right? Oh, yes, please.
I recognize this is a bit difficult when you haven't seen the rest of the budget in context.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you do have a motion on the floor, which is great. But when you do start to see the different budgets coming forwards, and you kind of look at travel and conferences in context, there's multiple opportunities for you to take a look at it again. So
that's reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, any more discussion on this? Director Acton has her hand up. Sorry. Yes.
I just wanted to add one point that is important to me, and I haven't heard anyone bring up around the conferences. This role, can wear you down, and the conference can be a real boost. And I was not able to go to UBCM this year, but I can tell you that if a conference coming up soon, I would certainly hop on it for that reason. So I'd be really careful on what we do to our colleagues by limiting the conferences when it actually can bring back a better working relationship with each other. It can bring back a boost for your community, just that spark that kind of rejuvenates you. So I think when we talk about it just being a perk, and that's the community's perspective. And if you've gone to a conference and you feel like it's just a perk, then yeah, you shouldn't go, because you are missing out. You are not using it to your advantage of what it can do for you. But anyway, I hope you guys agree with that, and I'll stop talking. So thanks for supporting the motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Director Wilson.
I'm not sure that anybody's mentioned it as a perk. I don't look at it as a perk at all. And I'm not sure that was brought forward apart from perhaps Director Morrison, but it's certainly not a perk. It is necessary. And I've enjoyed it. What I'm saying is it necessary for 100% attendance to get things done? Get things done. Thank you.
Okay, so any more discussion on the motion that's on the floor? I don't see any hands. I would just say that I support this motion. I think it's really important to actually requisition for what the real costs are, so that you can kind of level off the from year to year, so it stays relatively constant. So I'm comfortable with this. The only thing that we need to think about and continually ask ourselves is how can we make best use of the money that we do spend going to conferences? And yeah. So I'm going to call a question.
Can you read the motion?
Yes.
Read the motion, please.
Hang on a second. We're just getting the motion crafted perfectly.
Who's having fun? I am.
You can still join in tomorrow, Jesse.
Madam Chair, the motion on the floor is with respect to Function 250 Electoral Area Services, that the 2024 budget values maintaining core as presented by the acting CFO be approved, with the exception of excluding LiDAR.
Everyone understand that? I'll call the question. Yeah.
With the exception, excluding LiDAR.
Not exception.
Excluding LiDAR.
Zeroing out LiDAR.
I used the word accept the exclusion because it included, I'm saying generally in column G, but you're excluding LiDAR.
Okay, everyone? Call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Oh, Director Martman, are you opposed? Director Martman's opposed. Thank you all. That was done in record time, I hope. Back to the agenda.
Just a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. And I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Allison.